The Sunday afternoon sun beat down on the quiet streets of Oak Ridge as Zara Williams drove her black SUV through the neighborhood. She had just finished her weekly visit with her grandmother and was heading home to finish a school project, due the next day. The 17-year-old tapped her fingers on the steering wheel, humming along to the music playing softly through her speakers. Zara noticed the police cruiser parked at the corner as she approached the four-way stop. She came to a complete halt, looked both ways, and proceeded carefully through the intersection. In her rearview mirror, she saw the cruiser pull out behind her, lights suddenly flashing. Her heart jumped, though she couldn't think of any reason she'd be pulled over. What did I do wrong? She wondered, pulling over to the curb and turning down her music. She took a deep breath, remembering her father's instructions from years ago. Keep your hands visible, be respectful, don't make sudden movements. Officer James Mercer watched the black SUV for nearly 10 minutes before following it. His 12-hour shift was almost over, and he'd had a particularly frustrating day dealing with what his captain called community relations problems. In reality, Mercer had been reprimanded for the third time that month about his approach to certain neighborhoods. The criticism stung, especially coming from the higher-ups who had never walked a beat or felt the tension of approaching an unknown vehicle at night. When he saw the SUV roll through the stop sign, at least, that's what he would later claim in his report, he flipped on his lights and pulled out. Mercer approached the vehicle slowly, hand resting near his holster out of habit. He saw a young black girl in the driver's seat, hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel, eyes forward. License and registration, he said flatly, not bothering with any greeting. Yes, sir, Zara replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. My registration is in the glove compartment. I'm going to reach for it now, okay? Mercer nodded curtly, watching her every move with narrowed eyes. Zara moved deliberately, retrieving the documents and handing them over along with her license. Do you know why I pulled you over today? Mercer asked, scanning her information. No, sir. I don't, Zara answered honestly. You ran that stop sign back there, he said, his tone suggesting he didn't believe she was unaware of the violation. Zara's brow furrowed in confusion. I'm sorry, officer, but I'm certain I came to a complete stop. I always do at that intersection because kids from the park often cross there. Something in her calm, articulate response seemed to irritate Mercer further. He looked at her license again, then at the car's interior. This is an expensive vehicle for someone your age, he remarked. Who does it belong to? It's mine, sir. Well, my parents, Zara explained. They got it for my birthday last month. Mercer walked around the vehicle, shining his flashlight into the windows even though it was broad daylight. When he returned to the driver's side, his demeanor had changed. Step out of the vehicle, please, he ordered. May I ask why, sir? Zara asked, her voice wavering slightly for the first time. Step out of the vehicle now, Mercer repeated, his hand moving to rest on his holster again. I have reason to believe there may be illegal items in this car. Zara's mind raced. Illegal items? The only things in her car were textbooks, her gym bag, and the container of homemade cookies her grandmother had insisted she take home. Reluctantly, she unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped out, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. By now, a few pedestrians had slowed their pace, watching the scene unfold. An older woman walking her dog across the street had stopped completely, her phone now in her hand. Turn around and place your hands on the vehicle, Mercer instructed. Zara complied, fighting back tears as the officer patted her down. She felt humiliated as passers-by stared, some slowing their cars to watch. Officer, I don't understand what's happening, she said, her voice smaller than before. I haven't done anything wrong. That's not for you to decide, Mercer shot back. He finished the pat-down and then gestured toward the ground. Kneel down, hands behind your head. Zara's eyes widened. Kneel, but why? I said kneel. Mercer's voice rose sharply, causing a couple walking their child in a stroller to stop and stare. Do it now or I'll have to restrain you. With trembling legs, Zara lowered herself to the hot pavement, the rough surface digging into her knees through her jeans. She placed her hands behind her head, blinking rapidly to hold back tears. She wouldn't cry, not here, not like this. I'm going to search your vehicle, Mercer announced, already opening the driver's side door. Based on certain indicators, I have probable cause. You don't have my permission to search my car, Zara stated, trying to keep her voice from shaking. She remembered that much from her civics class. I'd like to call my father. Mercer ignored her, rummaging through the glove compartment and center console. He pulled out the container of cookies, opening it and peering inside suspiciously. By now, a small crowd had gathered. Phones were out, recording the incident. Zara kept her eyes fixed on the ground, the heat of embarrassment washing over her face. She had never felt so helpless, so stripped of dignity. "Is this really necessary?" called a voice from across the street. Diane Chen, owner of the local coffee shop where Zara often studied, had stepped out of her store after a customer mentioned what was happening. "That girl comes into my shop all the time. She's a good kid." "Ma'am, please stay back and mind your own business," Mercer called out without looking up from his search. "This is a police matter." "It's also a community matter when you have a teenager kneeling on the pavement for no apparent reason," Diane responded, crossing the street despite Mercer's warning. Zara felt a surge of gratitude at the woman's intervention, though fear quickly followed. She didn't want anyone else getting in trouble because of her. "It's okay, Ms. Chen," she said softly. "I'll be fine." Mercer emerged from the car, clearly frustrated at finding nothing incriminating. He approached Diane, who stood her ground. "Ma'am, if you interfere with this investigation, I'll have to place you under arrest as well." "Investigation of what exactly?" Diane challenged, her arms crossed. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like harassment." The standoff between them grew tense as more onlookers gathered. Someone in the crowd mentioned calling the police station to report what was happening. Another person shouted that they had the whole thing on video. Mercer turned back to Zara, who remained kneeling on the pavement, her knees now burning from the rough surface. "Where did you get this vehicle?" he demanded again. "I told you it was a gift from my parents," Zara repeated, her patience wearing thin despite her vulnerable position. "And what do your parents do that they can afford to give a teenager a car worth more than most people make in a year?" Before Zara could answer, Diane had pulled out her phone. "I'm calling someone who can help sort this out," she announced. "Put the phone away," Mercer ordered, taking a step toward her. "No," Diane replied firmly, already dialing. "I recognize this girl, and this has gone far enough." Zara closed her eyes briefly, trying to center herself. The sun beat down on her back, sweat beginning to trickle down her neck. How had a simple drive home turned into this nightmare? All around her she could hear whispers from the growing crowd, the occasional shout of protest at her treatment. "She's just a kid," someone muttered loudly. "Enough for all to hear. This is what they do." Another voice responded bitterly. Mercer returned to Zara's car, becoming more aggressive in his search. He pulled out her backpack, dumping the contents onto the passenger seat. Textbooks, notebooks, pens scattering everywhere. "Please be careful with my things," Zara called out, fighting to keep her voice level. "My laptop is in there." "Should have thought about that before you decided to drive around in a vehicle matching the description of one reported stolen last week," Mercer replied. This was the first mention of any stolen vehicle. Zara's confusion gave way to indignation. "My car wasn't stolen. If you check the registration I gave you, you'll see it belongs to my family." Mercer ignored her, continuing to search as Diane spoke urgently into her phone. The scene had taken on the atmosphere of street theater, with passers-by stopping to watch, some filming, others shaking their heads in disgust or anger. Zara remained kneeling, her legs going numb, her dignity in tatters. Yet something inside her refused to break. This wasn't right, and everyone watching knew it. Whatever happened next, she wouldn't let this moment define her. In the distance, the sound of another siren approached, growing louder by the second. The approaching siren grew louder, and Zara felt a mix of hope and dread. Would this second officer be any different, or would things only get worse? She remained kneeling on the hot pavement, knees aching, as curious onlookers continued to gather. Diane Chen stood her ground nearby, phone still pressed to her ear. "Yes, that's right," she was saying. "Corner of Maple and Pine, it's escalating quickly." She glanced at Zara with reassurance in her eyes. Officer Mercer seemed unfazed by the approaching siren, continuing his search of Zara's vehicle with growing frustration. The cookie container lay open on the hood, textbooks and notebooks scattered across the passenger seat. He yanked out the floor mats, checking underneath. "Nothing to hide, huh?" he muttered loud enough for Zara to hear. "Then why are you so nervous?" "I'm kneeling on the street while everyone watches," Zara replied quietly. Anyone would be nervous. A police cruiser pulled up behind Mercer's vehicle, lights flashing. A middle-aged officer stepped out, surveying the scene with obvious confusion. His name badge read Rodriguez, "What's going on here, Mercer?" Officer Rodriguez asked, approaching cautiously. "Possible stolen vehicle?" Mercer replied without looking up. Subject was evasive and uncooperative. Rodriguez looked from Mercer to Zara, then at the gathering crowd with their phones recording. His expression shifted from confusion to concern. "Why is she on the ground?" he asked, lowering his voice. "Precautionary measure," Mercer said dismissively. "You know how these stops can go." Something in Rodriguez's face suggested he didn't agree with Mercer's assessment, but he maintained his professional demeanor. He approached Zara slowly. "Miss, I'm Officer Rodriguez. Are you hurt?" "No, sir," Zara answered, her voice steadier than she felt. "But I've been kneeling here for nearly 15 minutes and I didn't do anything wrong." Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. "Can you tell me what happened?" Before Zara could answer, Mercer interrupted. "I've got this handled, Rodriguez. Dispatch sent you for backup, not to conduct your own investigation." "Actually," Rodriguez replied calmly, "Dispatch said there were multiple calls about a possible case of harassment by an officer. I'm just trying to understand the situation." The tension between the two officers was palpable. Rodriguez turned back to Zara. "May I see the vehicle registration again?" "I already checked it," Mercer snapped. "It doesn't prove anything. Could be fake." "Officer Mercer," Rodriguez said with forced patience, "let's follow procedure here." Diane stepped forward. "I know this young lady. She comes to my coffee shop almost every day after school. She's never caused any trouble." "And you are?" Rodriguez asked. "Diane Chen. I own the Blue Cup across the street." She pointed to her shop where curious customers were watching from the windows. "I've already made a call that should clear this up quickly," Mercer scoffed. "Made a call to who? Your lawyer friends who'll claim police brutality? Go ahead. Everything I've done is by the book." "Is it by the book to make a teenage girl kneel on hot pavement for running a stop sign?" Someone called from the crowd, which had grown to at least 20 people. "Stay back," Mercer shouted, his hand moving to his holster again. The crowd collectively tensed. Rodriguez stepped between Mercer and the onlookers. "Everyone, please give us some space," then to Mercer. "Let's de-escalate this, okay? There are too many eyes on us." "That's the problem with this job now," Mercer hissed. "Everyone's an expert on police work because they watched some videos online." While the officers spoke, Diane had moved closer to Zara. "You okay, honey?" she whispered. Zara gave a slight nod, though her knees were burning and her arms ached from being held behind her head for so long. "Help is coming," Diane assured her quietly. Rodriguez approached Zara again. "Miss, I'm going to help you up now, all right?" "She stays where she is until I've completed my search," Mercer insisted. "You've been searching for 15 minutes and found nothing," Rodriguez countered. This has gone on long enough. The standoff between the officers created an opening for Diane to step closer to Zara. "Your father is on his way," she whispered. Relief washed over Zara's face. Her father would know what to do. He always did. Mercer noticed the exchange and moved toward Diane. "Step back now, ma'am." "Final warning, or what?" Diane challenged. "You'll have me kneel on the pavement too? Is that how you handle middle-aged Asian women as well?" The crowd murmured their support for Diane, phones still recording every moment. Mercer's face flushed with anger. "That's enough," Rodriguez intervened. "Mercer, let's talk privately for a minute." He gestured toward their cruisers. Mercer hesitated, then reluctantly followed Rodriguez a few paces away. Their hushed conversation was tense, with Mercer gesturing animatedly while Rodriguez remained calm but firm. Zara watched them from her kneeling position, trying to read their body language. Would this nightmare end soon, or would it somehow get worse? A sleek black sedan turned the corner and slowed as it approached the scene. It pulled to a stop behind the police cruisers, drawing everyone's attention. The car screamed authority with its government plates and tinted windows. "Who's that?" someone in the crowd asked. "Probably the chief," another replied. "Someone important anyway." Mercer and Rodriguez paused their discussion, watching as the driver's door opened. A tall black man in his 50s stepped out, dressed in an impeccable suit despite it being Sunday. His presence commanded immediate respect, his expression grave as he surveyed the scene before him. Zara felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. "Dad," she whispered. Robert Williams took in the sight of his daughter kneeling on the pavement, her school things scattered across the car seats, the officers standing nearby, and the crowd of onlookers with their phones. His face revealed nothing of the rage he surely felt inside. Instead, he approached with measured steps, straightening his tie. "What's going on here?" he asked, his deep voice carrying naturally across the now hushed scene. Mercer stepped forward. "Sir, this is a police matter. I need you to stay back." Williams didn't even glance at Mercer, keeping his eyes on his daughter. "Zara, are you all right?" "Yes, Dad," she managed, her voice cracking slightly. Williams then turned to face the officers. "I'd like an explanation as to why my daughter is kneeling on the pavement like a criminal." Mercer squared his shoulders. "Sir, I stopped this vehicle for running a stop sign. The driver was uncooperative, and the vehicle matches the description of one reported stolen last week." "I see," Williams said, his tone measured. "And which vehicle would that be exactly?" "Because this particular SUV was purchased brand new from Lakeside dealership 4 weeks ago. I have the paperwork in my office." Rodriguez stepped forward. "Sir, there seems to be some confusion here." "There's no confusion," Williams interrupted smoothly. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a leather wallet. Opening it revealed a gold badge and ID card. "Federal Judge Robert Williams. That young lady is my daughter, and I'd appreciate it if you'd allow her to stand up now." The effect was immediate. Rodriguez's eyes widened in recognition while Mercer's face drained of color. "Judge Williams," Rodriguez said, recovering first. We didn't realize clearly," Williams replied. He walked past them to his daughter and gently helped her to her feet. Zara winced as she straightened her legs, pins and needles shooting through her limbs after kneeling for so long. The crowd had gone completely silent, many lowering their phones in shock. Diane Chen, however, wore a satisfied smile. "Thank you for calling me, Diane," Williams said with a nod in her direction. "Of course, Your Honor," she replied. "I couldn't just stand by." Mercer found his voice at last. "Judge Williams, I had no idea who she was. I was simply following protocol for what, officer?" Williams cut in. "For a teenager who allegedly ran a stop sign? Is standard protocol to have them kneel on the pavement while you search their vehicle without consent or probable cause?" Mercer struggled to respond. "The vehicle matched a stolen vehicle description. Yes, you mentioned that," Williams said. "I'm curious, though. Which part matched? The make, the model? Or was it simply the driver that caught your attention?" The implication hung in the air. Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably while Mercer's jaw tightened. "Dad," Zara said quietly, placing a hand on her father's arm, "can we just go home?" Williams studied his daughter's face, noting the exhaustion and humiliation she'd endured. His expression softened slightly. "Of course." Then to the officers, "I assume she's free to go? Or is there an actual charge here?" Rodriguez quickly shook his head. "No charges, Your Honor. This was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," Williams repeated, the words heavy with meaning. "Officer Mercer, correct?" "I believe we've met before." Mercer's brow furrowed in confusion. "I don't think so, Your Honor." 3 weeks ago, Williams continued, "I spoke at your department's training session on community relations and implicit bias. I believe you were in the back row." He paused, letting the information sink in. Seems the training didn't take. Someone in the crowd let out a low whistle. Mercer's face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "I was doing my job," he insisted, though his voice had lost its earlier authority. "Were you?" Williams asked simply. Then to Rodriguez, "I'll be following up with your captain tomorrow. For now, I'm taking my daughter home." He helped Zara gather her scattered belongings, placing them carefully back in her backpack. The container of cookies had been crushed during Mercer's search, crumbs spilling across the car hood. "Grandma's going to be upset about those cookies," Zara said with a weak attempt at humor. Williams put an arm around her shoulders. "She'll make more. She always does." As they prepared to leave, Diane approached with a card in her hand. "Your Honor, I recorded most of what happened. If you need a witness statement, I'm more than willing." Williams took the card with a grateful nod. "Thank you, Diane, for everything." Several others from the crowd stepped forward, offering their contact information as well. What had begun as a humiliating ordeal for Zara was transforming into something else, a community standing together against injustice. As Zara and her father drove away in his sedan, leaving her SUV to be picked up later, the crowd slowly dispersed. Officer Rodriguez was already on his radio, likely reporting to his superiors. Officer Mercer stood alone by his cruiser, the consequences of his actions beginning to dawn on him. What none of them realized was that this incident would soon spread far beyond their small community, forcing a reckoning that would change many lives forever. By Monday morning, the video had spread like wildfire. Someone had compiled footage from 3 different angles, showing Zara kneeling on the pavement, Officer Mercer searching her car, and finally, the arrival of her father, Federal Judge Robert Williams. The clip ended with Mercer's stunned face when he realized who he'd been dealing with. Local news stations picked up the story immediately. "Federal Judge's daughter forced to kneel during traffic stop," read the headline on the morning broadcast. Social media erupted with outrage, the hashtag #Justice for Zara trending by noon. In the Williams household, Zara sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone with a frown. Her father stood nearby, making coffee and pretending not to watch her. "You don't have to read all that," he said finally, sliding a mug toward her. "It might be better if you didn't." Zara looked up. Her eyes were tired but clear. "I need to know what people are saying, Dad." Judge Williams sighed. "I understand. But remember, most of these people don't know you. They don't know me. They're reacting to a 3-minute video." "But they're not wrong," Zara replied. "What happened was wrong. And it happens to people who don't have federal judges for fathers too, except there's no viral video for them." Williams studied his daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. At 17, she already possessed a keen sense of justice, something he'd always tried to instill in her, though he never imagined she'd experience injustice so personally. "You're right," he admitted, "and that's exactly why we need to handle this carefully." The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Williams checked his watch. "That'll be Thomas." Thomas Lee was the Williams family lawyer and one of Robert's oldest friends. He arrived carrying a leather briefcase and a grim expression. "It's worse than we thought," he announced, setting his briefcase on the counter. "The department is in full damage control mode. They're trying to paint Mercer as a lone wolf with no history of complaints." "That's not true," Williams said. "I reviewed his file this morning. 3 formal complaints in the last year alone, all from people of color. All dismissed due to insufficient evidence." "Exactly," Thomas agreed. "They're scrambling to bury those complaints deeper. But here's where it gets interesting. Officer Rodriguez has offered to make a statement about what he witnessed." Zara looked up sharply. "Really, isn't that risky for him?" Thomas nodded. "Very blue wall of silence and all that, but apparently your situation wasn't the first time he's seen Mercer cross a line." Williams took a long sip of his coffee, thinking, what are our options? "Well," Thomas began, pulling out several documents, "you could file a formal lawsuit against the department. Given your position and the video evidence, they'd likely settle quickly. Or you could push for Mercer's termination through internal channels." "Neither of those options fixes the real problem," Zara interjected. Both men turned to look at her. "If Mercer gets fired, they'll just hire someone else. The system stays the same." The doorbell rang again. This time it was Diane Chen carrying a bag from her coffee shop. "I brought breakfast," she announced. "I figured nobody felt like cooking today." She placed fresh pastries on the counter, then turned to Zara. "How are you holding up, honey?" "I'm okay," Zara said with a small smile. "Thank you again for helping yesterday." "Anyone would have done the same," Diane replied, though they all knew that wasn't true. Many had simply watched and recorded. "We were just discussing our next steps," Williams explained, introducing Thomas. Diane pulled out her phone. "I've been getting calls all morning from people who were there. Everyone wants to know what they can do to help." "That's actually perfect timing," Thomas said. "I was about to suggest something a bit unconventional." They all listened as Thomas outlined his idea. Instead of pursuing the usual legal channels, they could request a public community forum where the police department, including Officer Mercer, would have to face the community and answer questions. "It's risky," Thomas admitted. "They might refuse. But with the current public pressure and your position, Judge Williams, they'd look terrible if they declined." Williams considered this. "It's not about making them look bad. It's about creating actual change." "Exactly," Thomas agreed. "A lawsuit gets settled in private. This would be public, transparent, and might actually lead to meaningful reforms." Zara, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. "I want to speak at this forum." "If we do it," her father looked concerned. "Zara, you don't have to put yourself through that." "Yes, I do," she insisted. "People need to hear from me, not just about me." Across town at the police station, Captain Howard sat in his office with the police chief and the department's public relations director. The atmosphere was tense as they watched the news coverage on a small television. "This couldn't have happened at a worse time," the chief said, rubbing his temples, "right after that diversity training fiasco." "It wasn't a fiasco," Captain Howard corrected. "Judge Williams gave an excellent presentation. Mercer just didn't take it seriously." The PR director, a woman named Patricia, cut in. "The optics here are terrible. A black teenage girl forced to kneel during a minor traffic stop. Then it turns out she's the daughter of the same federal judge who just trained your officers on bias. The press is having a field day." "What's Mercer saying?" the chief asked. Howard sighed. "That he was following protocol. That the vehicle matched a description of a stolen car." "And did it?" Patricia asked. "Not even close," Howard admitted. "The stolen vehicle report was for a red sedan, not a black SUV. The chief cursed under his breath. "Put him on administrative leave immediately. We'll conduct an internal investigation." "That won't be enough," Patricia warned. "Not with the video spreading and Judge Williams involved. We need to get ahead of this." Their discussion was interrupted by a knock at the door. Officer Rodriguez entered, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Sir, I'd like to make a formal statement about yesterday's incident," he said. The chief and Howard exchanged glances. "Close the door, Rodriguez," Howard said. Meanwhile, Officer Mercer sat alone in his apartment, blinds drawn against the morning light. His phone had been ringing nonstop, colleagues, reporters, even his mother calling to ask if she'd really seen him on the morning news. He'd turned it off eventually, but not before seeing some of the comments online. People calling him a racist, demanding he be fired, even threatening his safety. It wasn't fair, he thought bitterly. They hadn't been there. They didn't understand the pressures of the job, the split-second decisions officers had to make. Sure, maybe he'd overreacted a bit with the girl, but that didn't make him a racist. And how was he supposed to know she was a judge's daughter? She looked like any other teenager to him. A heavy knock on his door startled him from his thoughts. Through the peephole, he saw his union representative, Lou, a veteran officer who handled most of the department's PR crises. "You look terrible," Lou said when Mercer opened the door. "Have you slept at all?" Mercer shook his head. "How bad is it?" Lou sighed, setting his briefcase on the coffee table. "I won't sugarcoat it. It's bad. The department's already distancing themselves from you. They're calling it a rogue action, not in line with training or protocols." "That's bull," Mercer began. "Save it," Lou interrupted. "I'm on your side, but we need to be strategic here. Judge Williams has requested a public forum instead of filing a lawsuit." Mercer frowned. "A public forum? What does that mean?" "It means," Lou explained, "that instead of fighting this in court, they want to discuss it openly with the community. With you present." "No way," Mercer said immediately. "That would be a public lynching." Lou winced at Mercer's poor choice of words. "Careful with that language. And you might not have a choice. The chief is seriously considering it, thinks it might save the department's reputation. The alternative is a lengthy investigation during which you'll be suspended without pay, followed by likely termination." Mercer sank into his couch, head in his hands. "This is a nightmare." "Look," Lou said, sitting beside him, "this might actually be your best chance. Show up. Apologize for overreacting. Say you've learned from the experience. People respect humility." "Apologize?" Mercer repeated incredulously. "I was doing my job." Lou fixed him with a hard stare. "Were you? Really? Because the footage I saw shows an officer escalating a routine traffic stop for no good reason, and now I'm hearing the stolen vehicle you claimed to be looking for wasn't even remotely similar to the one you stopped." Mercer had no response to that. "Think about it," Lou advised, standing to leave. "But don't think too long. This train is moving with or without you." By Wednesday afternoon, the decision had been made. The community forum would take place the following Monday at the town hall. The police department, after intense public pressure and private urging from city officials, had agreed to participate. Officer Mercer would attend, along with Captain Howard and the chief. Judge Williams had insisted on certain conditions. The forum would be open to all community members. Questions would not be screened beforehand, and local media could broadcast the entire event. Zara spent the days leading up to the forum preparing what she wanted to say. She met with other teenagers who had experienced similar treatment from police, listening to their stories and incorporating their perspectives into her statement. Are you nervous? Her father asked the night before the forum. Zara thought about it. Not nervous exactly, more determined. This isn't just about what happened to me anymore. It's bigger than that. Williams nodded, understanding. Just remember, whatever happens tomorrow, I'm proud of you. Standing up for what's right isn't always easy. I learned that from you, Zara replied with a small smile. As night fell across the town, different players in the unfolding drama prepared in their own ways. Diane Chen organized community members to attend the forum, ensuring a diverse representation of the town would be present. Officer Rodriguez reviewed his notes, knowing his decision to speak out could cost him friendships within the department. Captain Howard rehearsed statements that attempted to balance accountability with defending his department's overall record. And Officer Mercer lay awake, staring at his ceiling, wondering how his life had unraveled so quickly. Part of him wanted to skip town, avoid the public humiliation altogether. But another part, a part he barely recognized, wondered if there might be something to learn from all this after all. Morning would come soon enough, bringing with it a confrontation none of them would soon forget. Monday evening arrived with an electric tension in the air. The town hall, normally used for sleepy municipal meetings and the occasional school award ceremony, was transformed. Every seat was filled, with people standing along the walls and spilling out into the hallway. News vans lined the street outside, their satellite dishes reaching skyward. Inside, a long table had been set up on the stage. Name cards marked the places for Police Chief Wilson, Captain Howard, Officer Rodriguez, and Officer Mercer. On the opposite side sat Judge Williams, Zara, and Thomas Lee. The mayor, a nervous man named Frank Galloway, would serve as moderator from a podium between them. In a small room behind the stage, Zara adjusted the collar of her blazer. She'd chosen to dress formally for the occasion, not to impress anyone but to remind them that she wasn't just some kid. She was a young woman with thoughts and opinions that deserved respect. "You sure you're ready for this?" her father asked, watching her with concern. Zara nodded. "I've been ready since it happened." Judge Williams smiled slightly. "You know, most teenagers would want to put something like this behind them, not shine a spotlight on it. Most teenagers don't have the platform I do," Zara replied. "What kind of person would I be if I didn't use it?" Before he could answer, Thomas Lee poked his head in. "It's time. The place is packed, and the energy—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Let's just say people are fired up." Across the building in another small room, Officer Mercer sat alone. He'd arrived early to avoid walking through the crowd, many of whom would recognize him from the video. His union representative, Lou, had urged him to appear contrite without admitting specific wrongdoing, a delicate balance. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Captain Howard entered without waiting for a response. "Ready?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. Mercer nodded stiffly. "As I'll ever be." Howard studied him for a moment. "Look, whatever happens out there tonight, remember that your actions reflect on all of us. On the badge. So I'm supposed to just take whatever they throw at me?" Mercer asked bitterly. "Apologize for doing my job?" Howard's expression hardened. "Your job was not to force a cooperative teenager to kneel on the pavement for a minor traffic violation that evidence suggests didn't even happen. Your job was not to search her vehicle without consent or probable cause, and your job certainly wasn't to embarrass this department and undermine public trust." Mercer looked away, jaw clenched. "The chief wants to fire you," Howard continued bluntly. "I convinced him to wait until after this forum. Show some genuine reflection tonight, and maybe there's a path forward for you here otherwise." He left the sentence unfinished. At precisely 7 o'clock, Mayor Galloway called the forum to order. The buzz of conversation died down as he explained the format. Opening statements from both sides, followed by questions from community members, with closing remarks at the end. "I want to remind everyone that this is not a trial," the mayor emphasized, mopping his brow with a handkerchief. "This is an opportunity for our community to have an open, honest conversation about an incident that has affected us all." Chief Wilson spoke first, his statement carefully crafted by the department's PR team. He expressed deep concern over the incident, promised a thorough review of procedures, and emphasized the department's commitment to serving all members of our diverse community with dignity and respect. The audience listened in stony silence. These were familiar platitudes they'd heard before. When it was Judge Williams' turn to speak, he kept his remarks brief and measured, befitting his judicial position. He thanked the community for their support and emphasized that the goal wasn't punishment but progress. "What happened to my daughter was not an isolated incident," he said, his deep voice carrying throughout the hall without need of a microphone. "It was a symptom of a larger problem, one that affects many in our community who don't have the privilege of a title or the power to demand accountability." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Then, it was Zara's turn. She approached the microphone with steady steps, unfolded a piece of paper, then set it aside. "I had a speech prepared," she began, "but I think I'll just speak from the heart instead." She took a deep breath. 3 days ago, I was driving home from my grandmother's house. I stopped at a stop sign, then proceeded when it was clear. Minutes later, I found myself kneeling on hot pavement, surrounded by strangers, while an officer searched my car and suggested I was a criminal. The room was completely silent now, all eyes on her. What I felt in those moments wasn't just fear or humiliation, Zara continued. It was a profound sense of powerlessness. In an instant, I went from being a person with rights and dignity to being nothing. Just a suspect. Just a body to be controlled. From his seat, Officer Mercer shifted uncomfortably. "I've been asked many times if I think what happened was because of my race," Zara said. "I can't see inside Officer Mercer's mind. I can only tell you that when I look at who gets stopped, who gets searched, who gets made to kneel on pavement, there's a pattern. And we all know what it is." Sounds of agreement came from the audience. "But this isn't about punishing one officer," Zara continued. "It's about changing a system that allows these incidents to keep happening. It's about holding people accountable. Yes, but also about education, about empathy, about truly seeing each other as human beings worthy of respect." She looked directly at Officer Mercer for the first time. "I don't hate you, Officer Mercer. I don't even know you. But I would like you to really see me, not as a suspect or a stereotype, but as a person. A 17-year-old who loves photography and science, who volunteers at an animal shelter on weekends, who was just trying to get home to finish her homework." The silence that followed her words was profound. Even those who had come angry and demanding punishment seemed moved by her poise and perspective. When it came time for community questions, dozens of hands shot up. The mayor called on a middle-aged black man first. "My question is for Officer Mercer," he said. "My son is 15. He's getting his learner's permit next month. What am I supposed to tell him about how to stay safe if he gets pulled over? Because clearly following the law isn't enough." Mercer cleared his throat, unprepared for such a direct and personal question. He looked to Lou for guidance, but his representative merely nodded for him to answer. "I would tell him to keep his hands visible and follow all instructions," Mercer began awkwardly. "That's what Zara did," someone called out from the crowd, and she still ended up on her knees. "Order, please," Mayor Galloway interjected, though without much authority. Mercer struggled to find words. For the first time, he seemed to truly grasp the fear that his uniform could inspire. Not respect or security, but genuine terror. "I don't have a good answer," he admitted finally, "and I'm sorry for that." The questions continued for nearly 2 hours. Some were pointed and angry, others genuinely seeking understanding. Through it all, a picture emerged of a community deeply divided in its experiences with law enforcement. Elderly white residents spoke of helpful officers who checked on them during power outages. Black and Latino community members described routine stops that turned frightening. Of being treated as suspects in their own neighborhoods, Officer Rodriguez, when called upon, spoke candidly about the culture within the department. "There's an us versus them mentality that needs to change," he said. "We're supposed to be part of this community, not an occupying force." His words earned him glares from the chief and captain, but nods of appreciation from many in the audience. As the forum neared its conclusion, a young woman stood up with the final question of the night. She looked to be about Zara's age, maybe a classmate. "This is for everyone on the stage," she said. "Where do we go from here? After all the talking is done, what actually changes?" A heavy silence fell over the room. It was the question on everyone's mind. Surprisingly, it was Officer Mercer who spoke first. He'd been mostly silent throughout the evening, answering when directly addressed but otherwise keeping his head down. "I can't speak for the department," he said slowly, "but I know where I need to go from here." He turned to face Zara directly. What happened that day? It wasn't right. I let assumptions and, yes, biases, affect how I treated you, and I'm sorry. The apology hung in the air, unexpected and unscripted. Chief Wilson looked surprised, then relieved. Captain Howard's expression was unreadable. Judge Williams leaned forward. Apologies are important, but they're just words unless they're backed by actions and change. I agree, Mercer said, surprising everyone again, which is why I'd like to work with community leaders to develop better training for officers. If you'd be willing to have me, that is. Before Judge Williams could respond, Zara spoke up. I think that's a start, she said. A small one, but a start. As the forum concluded and people began to file out, discussing and debating what they'd witnessed, Zara found herself face to face with Officer Mercer in the hallway. Without the table between them, without the crowd watching. They were just two people, one whose life had been momentarily derailed, and one whose entire career hung in the balance. Did you mean what you said in there? Zara asked quietly. About wanting to change? Mercer nodded slowly. I didn't think I needed to. Now I know better. It wasn't friendship or forgiveness, not yet, but it was something else, something just as valuable. The beginning of understanding. As they parted ways, neither could have predicted how their paths would continue to cross in the months ahead, or how their unlikely connection would help spark changes that would ripple far beyond their small community. 6 months passed, and the seasons changed. Summer faded to fall. Fall gave way to winter, and now the first hints of spring were appearing around town. Small green buds dotted the trees along Main Street, and people had begun to shed their heavy coats. Inside the community center on Cedar Avenue, a very different kind of transformation was taking place. All right, everyone, let's wrap up for today, Zara said, standing at the front of a room filled with teenagers and police officers. Remember, next week we're discussing traffic stops from both perspectives. The unusual gathering, teens mostly of color, officers mostly in plain clothes, had become a regular occurrence over the past few months. What had started as a tentative effort at dialogue after the forum had evolved into something more structured, a youth police partnership program designed to build understanding between local teens and law enforcement. As people began to pack up their notebooks and water bottles, Officer Mercer approached Zara. Their relationship had evolved from tense adversaries to cautious collaborators, though neither would call it friendship exactly. That went well, he said. The role-playing exercise really got them talking. Zara nodded. It's easier to understand someone when you literally put yourself in their shoes for a minute. 6 months ago, neither of them could have imagined working together like this. After the community forum, the police department had been under intense pressure to make real changes. Chief Wilson had initially proposed superficial solutions, a new diversity statement, a one-day training session. But Judge Williams and other community leaders had pushed for more. The result was a comprehensive program that included policy changes, officer training, and community engagement initiatives like this one. To everyone's surprise, Officer Mercer had volunteered to participate, despite being temporarily demoted and placed on probation. My dad's coming by to pick me up, Zara said, checking her phone. He wanted to talk to you, actually. Mercer raised an eyebrow. About? The summer program, I think, Zara replied. He's been talking to the mayor about expanding what we're doing here. Outside in the parking lot, Captain Howard sat in his cruiser observing. He'd been skeptical of these programs at first, viewing them as PR stunts more than meaningful reform. But over the months, he'd noticed subtle changes within his department. Officers being more thoughtful about their interactions, fewer complaints from citizens, even improved morale among the ranks. His radio crackled with a call about a fender bender across town. As he pulled away, he noticed Judge Williams arriving. The two men exchanged nods, not quite friendly but respectful. They'd spent countless hours in meetings together over the past months, sometimes agreeing, often clashing, but always working toward the same ultimate goal. A safer community for everyone. Inside, the last of the teenagers were filing out, chatting among themselves. These weren't just the high-achieving students or the troublemakers. They were a cross-section of local youth, all with their own perspectives on police and authority. One of them, a quiet boy named Theo, lingered behind. He'd rarely spoken during the sessions until today, when he'd shared a story about being followed through a store by security guards. Officer Mercer? He said hesitantly. Can I ask you something? Not for the group, just for me. Mercer nodded, giving the boy his full attention. Of course. How do I know which cops are safe? Theo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Like, if I get stopped, how do I know if they're like you are now or like you were before? The question hit Mercer like a physical blow. It laid bare the reality that his previous actions had contributed to a world where kids like Theo had to strategize about staying safe from the very people sworn to protect them. Before he could answer, Judge Williams entered the room. Sensing the private moment, he stayed back, but Mercer waved him over. Judge Williams might have some thoughts on this too, Mercer said to Theo. It's an important question. The three of them sat down, and for the next 15 minutes they had the kind of honest conversation that would have been unimaginable 6 months earlier. No platitudes, no defensiveness. Just real talk about navigating a complex and sometimes dangerous reality. When Theo left, appearing a little lighter than before, Williams turned to Mercer. You've come a long way. Mercer shrugged, uncomfortable with praise he wasn't sure he deserved. Not far enough, clearly. Kids still have to worry about which officer they might encounter. Change is slow, Williams acknowledged, but it is happening, which is actually what I wanted to talk to you about. As Zara gathered her things, she watched her father and Officer Mercer deep in conversation. Their unlikely alliance had been the subject of both praise and criticism. Some community members felt the Williams family had been too forgiving, that Mercer should have lost his badge permanently. Others saw their collaboration as a model for how justice and reconciliation could work hand in hand. Zara had her own complicated feelings about it all. Some days, when the memory of kneeling on that hot pavement flashed through her mind, she wondered if they were being naive to think real change was possible. Other days, when she saw officers and teens laughing together or having breakthrough moments of understanding, she felt hopeful. Diane Chen had become a regular supporter of their programs, often providing coffee and pastries for the meetings. She joined Zara now, handing her a cup of hot chocolate. Your dad and Officer Mercer look serious, she observed. Zara nodded. Dad's been working on a proposal for a summer initiative, taking what we're doing here and expanding it to include community service projects, mentoring, that kind of thing. And Mercer would be involved? Diane asked, surprise evident in her voice. That's the idea, Zara said. He's not the same person he was 6 months ago. Diane studied her young friend. And you're okay with that? Working with him after what he did? Zara considered the question. I'm not doing it for him, she said finally. I'm doing it for Theo and all the other kids who deserve to feel safe in their own community. If Officer Mercer can help make that happen, then yes, I'm okay with it. Across town, Officer Rodriguez was being sworn in as the department's new community relations officer, a position created in the wake of the incident. His willingness to speak out against Mercer had initially made him an outcast among some colleagues, but his integrity had ultimately earned him respect and this promotion. As he recited the oath, he thought about the ripple effects of that Sunday afternoon 6 months ago. One incident, captured on video, had forced an entire community to confront uncomfortable truths they'd long avoided. It wasn't perfect. Change never was. But it was progress. Back at the community center, Judge Williams was outlining his vision for the summer program. We're calling it Building Bridges, and the mayor has already secured funding. It would be a 6-week program, bringing together 30 teens and 10 officers for community projects, workshops, and team-building activities. And you want me involved? Mercer asked, still surprised despite Zara's hint earlier. As one of the lead officers, yes, Williams confirmed. Your perspective is valuable precisely because of your journey. You've seen both sides, the problem and the possibility of change. Mercer was quiet for a moment. Some people will object. They'll say I don't deserve a second chance. Probably, Williams agreed. Change makes people uncomfortable. But this isn't about you deserving anything. It's about what's best for the community going forward. Zara joined them, Diane by her side. Did you ask him yet? She asked her father. Williams nodded. I was just explaining the concept. And? Zara looked at Mercer expectantly. Mercer glanced between father and daughter, still amazed at how life had brought them together. 6 months ago, he'd been at his lowest point, suspended, publicly shamed, facing the end of his career. Now he was being offered a chance not just to redeem himself, but to be part of something genuinely meaningful. "I'm in," he said simply. Later that evening, at the Williams home, Zara sat on the porch swing, scrolling through her phone. A local news notification caught her eye. Building Bridges program announced police and youth partnership expands. She clicked on the article, scanning for details. The reporter had interviewed several people, including Theo, who expressed cautious optimism about the initiative. There was also a quote from Officer Rodriguez about the importance of institutional change alongside personal growth. Her father joined her on the porch, handing her a mug of tea. "Anything interesting?" "They're already reporting on the summer program," Zara said, showing him the article. "That was fast." William smiled. "Good news travels quickly, too, sometimes." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as neighbors walked dogs or returned home from work. This same street, these same people, had existed before that fateful Sunday afternoon, but something fundamental had shifted in the community's consciousness. "Do you ever regret it?" Williams asked suddenly. "Being thrust into the spotlight like that? Taking on this role?" Zara considered the question carefully. The past 6 months had been challenging in ways she'd never anticipated. She'd received both praise and criticism, been called both a hero and a sellout. She'd had to relive that humiliating experience countless times as she told her story in different forums. But she'd also found her voice in unexpected ways. She'd discovered a passion for community organizing and policy work that had shaped her college plans. She'd seen firsthand how systems could change when enough people demanded it. "No," she said finally. "I don't regret it. I mean, I wish it hadn't happened at all, obviously. But since it did..." She paused, searching for the right words. "I think we've made something meaningful out of something painful. And that's not nothing." Williams put his arm around his daughter's shoulders, immensely proud of the young woman she was becoming. "No," he agreed softly. "That's not nothing at all." As twilight settled over the neighborhood, bringing with it the first cool breeze of evening, Zara thought about all the work still ahead, the policy still to change, the minds still to open, the bridges still to build. It would be slow, imperfect progress, with setbacks and frustrations along the way. But looking at how far they'd already come in just 6 months, she allowed herself to feel something that had been in short supply lately. Hope. Not the naive hope that all problems would magically disappear, but the grounded hope that comes from seeing real change, however small, take root and begin to grow.